Hi class, today's flip video lesson we are going to be discussing primary and secondary sources so you can help complete your research paper and help find appropriate sources to support your thesis. Hopefully by the end of this lesson you'll have a better sense of how to evaluate sources and which sources will be most useful in your assignment. Now many people are confused when it comes to primary and secondary sources. They are aware that there are two different types of sources but aren't exactly clear of the differences. It is important to know the difference so you can determine what material you research will be most beneficial to you to support your thesis. Now let's discuss first what a primary source is. Primary source is a source that tells you about an event during the time the event was taking place. They are first-hand authoritative accounts of events, topics, and historical periods. Primary sources are anything that includes first-hand information. Okay. Primary sources are important because primary sources allow you to form your own argument and opinions about a topic and allows you to evaluate information to support your thesis and critique an original piece of work based on your own ideas. Examples of primary sources are, but are not limited to, the following: speeches, photographs, letters or personal diaries and journals, paintings, surveys, and newspaper articles. Now, secondary sources. A secondary source tells you about an event but is from a time after the event occurs. A secondary source usually talks about primary sources and allows you to interpret, critique, and analyze primary sources. Secondary sources are important because they allow you to consider other perspectives that you may not have considered yourself, and they can also help strengthen your own argument. Some examples of secondary sources are, but not limited to, textbooks, magazines, encyclopedias, newspaper articles, criticism, and controversies. Now, both primary and secondary sources are equally important to your paper because they both allow you to create, strengthen, and support the argument that you're putting forth in your thesis. Now, let's try an example. Would Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, a photo of him saying the speech, would this be considered a primary or a secondary source? And the answer is it would be considered a primary source. This would be considered a primary source because it is information about a given topic that was from the actual time in history when the topic was taking place. Now, would a passage in a textbook talking about Martin Luther King's speech be considered a primary or secondary source? And this would be considered a secondary source because an article in a textbook that talks about Martin Luther King's speech, it is being talked about the topic, but past the time that has actually happened. It is very important to understand that just because a textbook or encyclopedia is talking about an event does not make it a primary source in itself. So that is the end of our lesson for today. Hopefully this gives you a better understanding of the difference between the two sources and helps you pick appropriate sources for your research papers. Thank you.